Take her to Chanel cause she fine. Take her to Chanel cause she fine. Take her to Chanel cause she fine. Paint your fingernails cause you fly.
The poorest countries in the world 2021. The world's poorest countries suffered from civil wars, ethnic and sectarian strife, and then COVID-19 came along, making bad situations worse. The world has enough wealth and resources to ensure that the entire human race enjoys a basic standard of living. Yet people in countries like Burundi, South Sudan and Somalia, the three poorest in the world, continue to live in desperate poverty. Number 10. Madagascar. Everything changed last year. COVID-19, the World Bank stated, has triggered a sharp recession, hitting especially hard the population employed in tourism and in the manufacturing sector. What's worse, the outbreak also depleted the availability of fiscal resources for priority investments and social programs, putting on hold the goal of achieving more inclusive growth. Located 400 kilometers off the coast of East Africa, Madagascar is the fourth largest island in the world. Known for its astonishing wildlife, the flourishing tourism industry has not been able to lift the country out of poverty. The majority of the population is still dependent upon agriculture for their livelihoods, leaving the country's economy especially vulnerable to weather-related disasters. Since becoming independent from France in 1960, Madagascar has experienced bouts of political instability, violent coups and disputed elections. Number 9. Liberia. Africa's oldest republic has also ranked amongst the poorest nations for the longest time. While the country has enjoyed peace and stability since the ending of the Civil War in 2003, its governments failed to adequately address serious systemic problems and structural challenges. To add to the difficulties, this country of about 5 million has greatly suffered from the decline in commodity prices and the major Ebola epidemic that hit West Africa in 2014. Expectations were high when the former football star George Weah became president in 2018. His term was instead marred by high inflation and unemployment and negative economic growth. Although a moderate recovery is now projected, COVID-19 is bound to cast a long shadow on the nation's prospects. Number 8. Mozambique. The former Portuguese colony has plenty of arable land and water, and ample energy and mineral resources. Mozambique is also strategically located, as 4 of the 6 countries it borders are landlocked and depend on it as a conduit to global trade, and over the past 10 years has often posted average GDP growth rates of more than 7%. Yet it remains among the top 10 poorest countries in the world, with large sectors of the population continuing to live well below the poverty line. While a 15-year-long civil war ended in 1992, severe climate conditions, corruption and political instability never went away. To make things worse, since 2017 attacks carried out by Islamic insurgent groups have plagued the gas-rich northern part of the country. Over 4,000 people were killed and another 600,000 displaced. Number 7. Niger. With 80% of its landlocked territory covered by the Sahara Desert and a rapidly growing population largely dependent upon small-scale agriculture, Niger is under threat from desertification and climate change. Food insecurity is high, as are disease and mortality rates, and the army's recurrent clashes with jihadist group and Islamic State (ISIS) affiliate Boko Haram have displaced thousands of people. One of the main drivers of the economy, the extraction of valuable natural resources such as gold and uranium, has also suffered from volatility and low commodity prices. ER7. Niger. Number 6. Democratic Republic of the Congo. Since gaining independence from Belgium in 1960, the Congo has suffered decades of rapacious dictatorship, political instability and constant violence. The country turned a page in 2019, when Félix-Antoine Tshisekedi Tshilombo, the son of legendary opposition leader Etienne Tshisekedi, was elected as the new president. The tasks he faces are daunting. His controversial predecessor Joseph Kabila, who had governed since succeeding his assassinated father in 2001, is credited for bringing an end to what is commonly referred to as the Great African War, a conflict that claimed up to 6 million lives, either as a direct result of fighting or because of disease and malnutrition. However, he did little to improve the lives of people who survived the war. Over 60% of the country's 92 million population still live on less than $2 a day. Number 5. Malawi. Malawi is a generally peaceful country that has had stable governments since gaining independence from Britain in 1964. However, disputed poll results are far from being an anomaly. In 2020, the country's constitutional court annulled former President Peter Mutharika's poll win in the previous year's general election, citing vote tampering. Theologian and politician Lazarus Chakwera, who was sworn in his place, declared that he wanted to provide the kind of leadership that makes everybody prosper. The pandemic put that plan on hold. Last year, the country's GDP dropped to 0.6% from 4.5% a year earlier. Number 4. Central African Republic. For the first time since its independence from France in 1960, in 2016 the Central African Republic has democratically elected a president, former mathematics professor and Prime Minister Faustin Archange Touadera, who campaigned as a peacemaker who could bridge the divide between the Muslim minority and the Christian majority. Yet, while his successful election has been seen as an important step towards national reconstruction, large swaths of the country remain controlled by anti-government and militia groups. When, last December, Touadera won a second term, rebel forces backed by the former dictator François Bozizé sought to retake control of the country. Number 3. Somalia. This country of 16 million on the Horn of Africa never seems to catch a break. A projected GDP growth of over 3% in 2020 was interrupted by the compounded effect of the coronavirus pandemic, an infestation of locusts unprecedented in modern times, and intensified floods, which caused the economy to contract by 1.5%. Yet the World Bank says Somalia could have a brighter future. Rapid urbanization, growing use of digital technologies, planned investments in sectors such as energy, ports, education and health can support economic growth and job creation. A tenuous recovery is already underway, and the government has pledged its commitment to charting a course toward better resilience. Number 2. South Sudan. South Sudan is the newest nation in the world. It was born on July 9, 2011, 6 years after the agreement that ended the conflict with Sudan, Africa's longest-running civil war. However, violence has continued to ravage this landlocked state of roughly 11 million. Formed by the 10 southernmost territories of Sudan and home to around 60 indigenous ethnic groups, a new conflict broke out in 2013 when President Salva Kiir accused his former deputy, rebel leader Riek Machar, of staging a coup. As a result, it is estimated that as many 400,000 people were killed in clashes and nearly 4 million have been internally displaced or fled to neighboring countries. Number 1. Burundi. The small landlocked country of Burundi, scarred by Hutu-Tutsi ethnic conflict and civil war, has the rather unenviable distinction of topping the world's poverty ranking. With about 90% of its nearly 12 million citizens relying on subsistence agriculture, and the overwhelming majority of them living on $1.25 a day or less, food scarcity is a major concern. The level of food insecurity is almost twice as high as the average for sub-Saharan African countries. Furthermore, access to water and sanitation remains very low, and less than 5% of the population has electricity. All these problems, needless to say, have been exacerbated by the pandemic.